Hey, everybody, in this episode of the X-Files After Show, we're breaking down Season 11, Episode 2, This. Take a close look around. Is everything looking fuzzy? Are things not fully rendered? Could you be in a simulation? Could we be in a simulation? Are we just a simulation? We'll find out next.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Could you think of any other musical choice that we could play for this episode of the X-Files After Show? This is the Ramones, of course, from California Sun. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the X-Files After Show, where we'll be breaking down every episode of Season 11, airing on Fox Wednesday nights. Man, to be able to say that sentence in 2018, pretty cool. I'm one of your hosts, Frank Moran. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at HappyGoJackie.
I am the life model decoy of Lex Michael, and you can find me in this chair this week and all of our social media at TheLexMichael.
I am Jim Frye. I'm the managing editor of theconguy.com. It's a website all about fandoms and Comic-Cons, and you can find me at ConGuyJim.
And, of course, the fourth member of our panel, Lucretia Lyons. She is on assignment in Las Vegas. She's consuming, she's expoing, she's electronicing, all that stuff over there at CES. So if you happen to be in Vegas, or you're heading over there this week, go out and search out for Lucretia Lyons. She'll be on the floor.
And if you happen to get a weird staticky message from Lucretia Lyon on your phone, she's dead.
That's true. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, no. It's just that the lights are going to go out. That's all that's going to happen. Isn't that crazy? That's what.
We're making a trip.
How
We're heading
ironic.
east, guys, to help her out.
Yeah.
So look at that. So back with episode 2. I would think even before we break down the episode further, just general impressions, I will say, at least for me, a drastic turnaround from last week's season premiere.
Yeah, like, Jim, I don't know about you, but the feeling I had when this episode ended was, this is exactly how I want an X-Files revival to feel.
Mm-hmm. This one made sense. I mean, this one felt... I was reading somebody else saying that this one felt like it wasn't just here just for nostalgic sake. It was here because it was telling a fresh story, a new story, and it was like moving things forward. It really was a great X-Files episode. I loved it.
And what was cool is for an episode that's ostensibly a one-off, there were a lot of little mythology threads that they wove through it, both things that we introduced last week and also a couple of really nice specific references to seasons past. Like, obviously, the lone gunmen figure prominently into the backstory of this episode, and I liked little nods to the fact that in season 9, when they sacrificed themselves, Mulder wasn't around, for example, and I like that they shout that out. And we learn Deep Throat's real name.
Which is very cool. Some nice nods to for X-Files lore throughout the past. It was some shows. It was a big charge. Yeah. Speaking of charge, though, Lex Michael. There's a new program coming out next week.
It's true.
On a different network, on the CW, but just because it's on a different network, we cover all networks. We cover all different varieties of shows. There's a new show coming your way, though, folks. If you love science fiction, you love superheroes, Lex Michael, what is this show?
Yeah, well, speaking of science fiction and superheroes, if you watch AfterBuzz TV, Frank Moran and myself, we're on the Legends of Tomorrow panel, and we pop up occasionally talking about these other DC CW shows like Arrow, Flash, Supergirl, and there is a new show that is joining that block that I think we're all pretty excited about, Black Lightning. On January 16th, when the CW's newest superhero suits up, lightning's gonna strike. Don't miss the electrifying new series, Black Lightning. Black Lightning, a.k.a. Jefferson Pierce, had previously powered down his crime-fighting career and for the last 9 years had been saving lives the best way he knew how, as principal of the local high school. But in this city, when the hero's away, the gangs will play. And this dude's a family man, so when his people get caught in the crosshairs, it's time to take charge. Now the former hero is back in full force for a second round against corruption and violence, because lightning does strike twice. It's dark days for the city of Freeland, but the storm is coming when Black Lightning brings his power to the people. Not only will the series Black Lightning spark you up, but also the soundtrack is full of slammin' hip-hop cuts like songs by Rome Fortune and old school hits from blues singer Nina Simone, Bobby Bland, and the great Isaac Hayes. On January 16th, the world will know Black Lightning. Series premiere after The Flash, only on the CW.
I'm looking forward to this series. Black Lightning has always been a character I've had a soft spot for, so I'm excited to see him on the television.
I'm very hyped about it. I suspect that if it is kept separate from the rest of the Arrowverse, that will not be a permanent arrangement, or at least I hope not.
I would agree. I mean, it would be weird to have a standalone superhero series on the CW.
And in a world where Supergirl was on a different network and is now fully under that same umbrella, I feel like it's like we're gonna wade into the pool before maybe in the next crossover jumping into the deep end and bringing that entire pocket over into the bigger world.
Oh, that'd be cool. That'd be cool.
It's kind of a cool premise too. a used to be superhero. It feels a little bit like Incredibles, you know.
Yes.
Used to be superheroes and they kind of retired, but he's got to come back because things are awry, and I just think it's kind of just feels really neat.
Yeah, and the way they do the electricity when he's like at night, where the costume kind of glows, is a nice little touch. Excited about that. But, folks, as much as we're excited about Black Lightning, we're here to talk about the coolness of this episode of the X-Files.
Yeah.
So it starts off with a nice, as we play the Ramones, California Sun. We do see Fox and Scully. Or I don't know why I'm using as Fox. It's Mulder and Scully. I'm saying Fox because I feel so close to the character. You know, I can call him Fox.
He's on a first name basis.
That's right.
Dat Boy Fox.
Hanging out at his house as we see some gunmen coming up to take out a hit on these.
So like right out of the gate, this shootout. How cool was this shootout?
It's pretty cool. I love to see Scully sliding under the table.
Right.
The table goes down. It feels so much like something like J.J. Abrams would film. You know, it felt really good.
I felt it was cool to see this episode, just in terms of some of the action sequences with Mulder and Scully. That I feel like we never really got to see them like looking as dynamic as they did in the original run of the show.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about aesthetically how they're very much doing now 21st century television aesthetics, like the 24 comparison that we made, and this feels very much keeping in that style. You didn't necessarily see action this frenetic and dynamic on the original run of the show.
It was still frenetic, yeah. It really was.
Yeah.
Going from here to here to here to here.
And it felt so smooth. The sense of geography was clear, and like it's nuts to see how well they can both still handle themselves physically.
True, like like there were a couple of fight sequences like on the stairs where Mulder was holding his own for a little bit. I was like, man, I'm not used to thinking of Mulder, but as like kind of more of an action guy. But he's a trained FBI agent. He would be trained in these matters. But that's not my first go-to when I think of Mulder and Scully.
Yeah, and we've seen them have to get a little bit physical in the past, but I can't recall right off the top of my head. Yeah, like this is a full-on. This felt a little bit like almost Taken. You know what I mean?
Especially Scully with that sliding and hitting the table and shooting around the table. I mean, they've turned her into an action hero a little bit. Maybe it's because they've been in wherever they've been for the last 17 years. You know, hiding out and you know whoever's been after them. But this was great, and even though it was still like pretty frenetic and very 24-ish, they still went back to the original series feel when they got away and went out into the woods and the fog, and it felt old school X-Files at that point, which I love.
Absolutely.
Now, of course, we're talking about this, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention that you folks also have a chance to chime in with your thoughts as well. We do have the chat up and running, so feel free to hop in and share your thoughts, as many of you already are, about this episode or just the X-Files in general. While you're doing that, though, you can also like us on Facebook and give us those 5 stars on iTunes, and feel free to subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Yeah, so of course they knock out 2 of the 3 gunmen that are getting them. One, which we've talked a little bit before the show started.
The 3 lone gunmen that were coming. Yeah.
One gets away, who's we're very intrigued by because he's got a look.
A very distinct mute hitman / assassin, which is a running trope of X-Files going back to the very beginning. This guy very, very distinct looking with the long, like the silvery hair.
Look at the who's that? That is it. Dog the Body Hunter? Didn't he look a little bit like? He kind of looked like that a little bit.
But the thing that kicks us all off is that Mulder's cell phone goes off, and we've got Langley from the Lone Gunman, who died 15, 16 years ago.
So as much as I love this episode, there are a couple of things that I'm having trouble connecting dots on. A few things that maybe don't fully line up for me, and a lot of it is, I think, of nitpicky stuff.
Yeah.
Early on in the episode, Mulder makes the comment about how Langley's been dead for 16 years. And then later in the episode, when they go talk to Karan Hambi, she says that Langley and she were approached for this project 15 years ago.
Yes.
Now, of course, you could chalk that up to they're both just making a rough estimate. I don't know that it's necessarily an error, but it's something that I puzzled at. I went, wait a second, was that intentional? Was that an oversight?
But did you guys, are you familiar with the comic book series that they came out with?
Yes, they did a retcon in the comics, right?
Yeah, I mean, in the comics, they died. The lone gunman died in the episode, but they were hiding out and living in a secret base underneath their gravestones in the cemetery there.
That's right.
Written by Chris Carter.
Yes,
so
I remember reading some of that several years ago. I wasn't sure whether or not that was still canon.
You never can tell.
Right. I guess it's tough when you figure like comic book or continuations of a series, even though it's written by. I mean, I guess like with the Buffy and the Angel,
right,
overseen by Joss Whedon, so he considers it, just a continuation of the original premise. But it's wonder. Yeah, I'd be curious to see, does Chris Carter kind of view it as such?
What was the other thing? Oh yeah, from the very beginning, two things. One, I really enjoy, for sentimental reasons, obviously, that Mulder still has a framed photo of the lone gunman in his home. I enjoy even more that it's very clearly a publicity photo from the Lone Gunman spin-off series. Did you guys catch? And I had
the fourth face,
the little face.
Yeah.
So do you guys know what that little face is?
Yeah.
So okay, so
Vaguely, I do.
Okay, so what is your understanding of it?
My understanding is that a couple years ago, I was reading about it in Vice, that there was a meme going around about people thought they were having dreams.
Yes.
And this guy, this vision, this picture that was in the Lone Gunman's picture last night was showing up in everybody's dreams across the country. It was a big hoax, supposedly. Well, I mean, yeah, it's a big hoax. You never know. But that's what I understand is a little bit. Which was so great that they had it in the picture just briefly last night.
That was my understanding of it too. It was just like a meme of a pretty weird. I mean, you can see if you zoom in, but also if you search. I think you can Google search like "Have you dreamed this man?"
Yeah, yeah.
And you'll be taken to a photo of this guy. It's very odd features that a bunch of people. Now, okay, were these people real people, or were they completely fabricating these
From
accounts?
what I understand, it came back to somebody who was a sociologist was trying to create some kind of sensation of like groupthink or. I don't fully. I'm gonna have to look more into it. I was just reading it like earlier today. And I was like, what? I'd never heard of it.
I had never heard of it.
I
either.
never dreamed it.
No, definitely not. But so it's so of course because the internet is the internet, people immediately start going down rabbit holes about well, what could this mean? Does that mean this is all a dream? Does that what maybe all of season 10 was a dream? What reality are we in right now? And I'm like, guys, relax. Everybody just take a deep breath real quick.
Just part of season 10 was a dream.
But I like there. See, Steve just pulled this up. This guy, ever dream this man?
That's him.
And so yeah, that's the fourth face in the framed Lone Gunman photo.
I don't feel I've ever dreamed that, man. I can feel like I can say
Regardless, so clever. I mean,
Yes.
I like those little bitty details like that, and that gets everybody running down the rabbit holes because, you know, X-Files, it came of age right at the beginning of the cusp of the internet age.
Yeah.
But now that we're fully in it, this is ripe for people running around with it. I love it.
It is interesting though with the Lone Gunmen. I feel like I enjoyed them on the X-Files on the original run, and you know, for the most part, I enjoyed their little standalone series as well. But they decided to kill him off in season 9.
Lame.
I thought that was very lame, and I feel like that is something that I can't imagine the creators and Glenn Morgan, James Wan, Chris Carter, they regret now. But it's one of those things like
they could have easily brought him back. There was no that's my one pet peeve with this episode. I love the episode for what it is, but. Why couldn't they brought him back? What we never saw them really die. They were just in the room, and we got all we assumed that they died. And even like Skinner and Scully last night were discussing. Well, we never saw the bodies,
right?
You know, so why we briefly saw them last season on the
mushroom trip.
The mushroom trip dream
weird
sequence.
like the cowboy bar.
And I was getting stoked when they were advertising. It's like, oh, I loved the Lone Gunman. They were my favorite parts of the series, and the fact that Langley was back was very cool. And I'll take what I can get, but I wish they would have found a way to, they could have written around it. I wish he was back.
The interesting though too is like I feel like even when they were killed off, I don't think everybody was thrilled by that choice even at the time.
No, definitely not.
But I also feel like it's tough now because if you were to tell Chris Carter like, hey, don't kill these guys off because 15 years from now you're going to be bringing the show back,
right?
Then maybe he'd second guess it like, oh, okay. But I feel like, do you want to tell creators that are working on shows now, like, hey, don't make any big choices towards the end of your series run because you never know. You could get brought back in 15 years and you may regret some of the decisions you're making.
For me, what I really bumped up against wasn't necessarily that they killed the Lone Gunman. It was the way they killed the Lone Gunman after them being relatively off the table on the X-Files for a little bit. They brought him back, and there are plenty of people online have made comments to the effect of it almost felt like Chris Carter was trying to spite people for not watching the Lone Gunman spinoff. I cannot speak to whether or not there is any truth to that, but for me, it was the way what I felt to be a relatively underwhelming exit for them.
Can we stop with the killing our heroes already? Luke, Han, the Lone Gunman. I'm tired of it. Oh,
but they could live forever in this simulation.
That's true.
Which is kind of cool.
It is cool, but it's terrifying.
Matrix 4.
Because I feel like, as far as we know, it's only Langley inside the simulation. The other two did not. So, I mean, yeah, I'm sure he's...
Project on that real quick, guys. Wasn't it Ringo that Scully called out towards the end?
Yes, it was.
Turned the key?
But that's Langley.
Yeah.
Oh, got it. Sorry, guys.
Yes.
although Ringo Frohickey has a nice ring
That's
to
right.
it. Yeah. But even jumping back even a little bit further than that, I wanted to hit really quick the title hit at the end of the
Yes.
opening titles. The in the place of the truth is out there. This week it was accuse your enemies of that which you are guilty.
What the heck is that?
Well, so did you guys necessarily tie that into this episode specifically, or the events of this episode? I did not, but of course it felt like a subtweet to our current
Political statement?
Yeah, it felt like a big, broad subtweet to the entire thing. And this episode was full of acknowledgments of the world as it exists today and what the FBI's place in it would be and is, and what the X-Files' place in it would potentially be. And I think, in my opinion, I think they did a better job weaving a lot of those elements through this episode than maybe they did last week.
But the thing is, like, I'm not sure I'm going to love trying to tie it so closely. That makes it less timeless for me. I loved the 90s. I don't remember them doing that so much in the 90s. Like, I mean, you would see the picture of the president on the wall, but that was about it. You know, and it was the X-Files was an off the radar, but now they're elevating it to, I mean, if this becomes that the world is ending because Trump ordered the end of the world, I don't think I'm going to be happy with it.
I don't think I am either. If we're all still here in 15 years, I don't want to revisit this season of X-Files and constantly be reminded of this terrible, terrible time.
It does feel like it's easy. I mean, that you see those nods like we did last week because it's a mythology episode, and you're seeing characters like the cigarette smoking man who has had such a alleged touch with history.
Do you guys remember that moment in the second movie where they're called back to the FBI and they're standing in the hallway and there's this, they're framed looking at the wall, and between them is the presidential photo of George W. Bush, and they look at each other, and then there's that little
yeah.
on the soundtrack. I don't really have too much to say about that. I need you all to share the burden of remembering that happened.
Well, there is a sense of just the passage of time and what society's changed, like from the original airing of the show to what it is now. And
I did like Mulder's line about, like, well, it's about time the Bureau found out what it's like to feel a little spooky.
yeah, or even when
I did like that.
Yeah, as they're sitting there at Deep Throat's grave, and she's saying, like, you know, back when Deep Throat got killed back in the late 90s, like, we thought it couldn't get any worse. And that seems like
Everything we feared has come to pass.
Yeah.
Also, Ronald Pakula.
Yes.
The real name of Deep Throat. There was some moment, the first moment where he's like, I never knew his name until now. Immediately I thought, how do you know this is his name?
How do you know that's him?
Right. So then he says, by way of explanation, I watched that funeral from
from up
1,000
there.
yards over there with binoculars, and I was like, okay. And then I went,
Oh wait, I thought he was talking about the lone gunman funeral.
no, I thought he was talking about Deep Throat's funeral. No, it was Deep Throat's funeral.
It was Deep Throat's funeral, yeah.
He never visited out of respect. But then I went, all of these headstones look identical.
Right.
How do you know that it was exactly this headstone?
I would be
That's
hard-pressed.
very impressive.
Yeah, after over almost 20 years, like to remember, like, yep, it was that exact headstone, and I can remember from my vantage point all the way over there that I'm standing right in front of the one that I would have been looking at.
I will say, though, I love, and all throughout this episode, but I really started to feel it in their banter in the scene, Mulder and Scully's, the way that they're functioning as a unit and their chemistry. And it feels so much more this week than last week
Yeah.
to me. Like, these are people that have been partners for decades.
Yes.
Like, it felt, their banter just felt so snappy and so natural and so comfortable.
Yeah, just even like the bit at the top where they're when you want to taint the evidence, and Mulder
said
responds,
taint.
"Yeah, that was it. That was it." All right, that's all we needed out of that. To step back with our Deep Throat reveal of Ronald Pakula. It's also a nod to Alan J. Pakula from like All the President's Men,
Yes.
Parallax View. So I thought that was a nice little touch.
There are a couple of fun nods on the headstones in that, much like last season in Mulder and Scully Meet the Weremonster when we were in a cemetery. A couple of fun names, like I think Kim Manners had a headstone in that scene. A couple of nice nods on these headstones, and they're people that have worked with or around X-Files personnel. One of the headstones, and I forget the name, it's like George Donald Rivers, I believe. People are having a hard time sourcing that name, and the speculation is it's a reference to a character from an old episode of Outer Limits.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Going back to the banter, though, I have to admit, what I really enjoyed about it too is because I felt like sometimes even like last season as well too, that when Scully and Mulder aren't on the same page, I get a little tiresome of like just like the butting heads a lot. And I
Yeah.
feel like it was nice in this episode to see them on the same page, still have their own separate points of view, but it was very complimentary and not antagonistic.
Right.
And in the
So-
same room.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no
together
kidding.
instead of apart, and somebody's come save the other person. You know, I like
Yes.
them doing things together.
Yes, and like the familiarity, and like that's how you get moments. Like, how do you operate so well in handcuffs? Like, you don't know.
Yeah.
No, yeah, like you don't. Yeah, that was awesome. That was a good line.
so great.
So of course we are led on a big chase. Finding Langley on the phone opens up a whole Pandora's chest of Pandora's box, I should say, of things. We've got a Russian private firm that has been comes out and doesn't ask nicely for
Right.
Fox and for Mulder and Scully to come out.
Well, and the guy that's leading this hit squad, very, very Russian, there's that line pretty early on when he's talking to them from outside about the body cams line. Which again felt like a really big subtweet to the entire government as it exists, where he's got the line about, my men are wearing body cams. You know how that tends to go for the people who aren't.
Yeah. Or even that's the way identify yourself, and that's not the way the world works anymore.
Right.
And it's like, oh, all right, sure.
Like we are dealing with, again, like if you really scrutinize every plot detail from this episode, I'm not sure how much sense it all makes, but I enjoy very much that we're playing with these ideas that now like a Russian private security cell has from the executive branch has essentially this contract that is high level enough that the FBI essentially has no jurisdiction over what they do.
True, and I mean, given like what we see a little later in the episode when Skinner tries to get everything resolved for Mulder and Scully, it's like, yeah, well, the FBI is not really
In good standing with the
Yes.
White House.
But to think now, you have to think like, all right, you got to imagine that Trump is president here. He's the one that's
Well, but the thing is,
which
that,
is so weird.
but is he? Because when last season when it ended, it was 2016, wasn't it? Like from what I was reading, like this season is basically 2 years after that.
Oh,
2 years later.
Yeah, that's true. So if it was happened pretty much
So
instantaneously.
it was the previous president.
Oh yeah,
So like whatever we're watching started in the previous administration, or whatever fictional administration is going on, because they've never. Well, yeah, they have. I don't know. I was reading today. I was trying to figure out the timeline.
Right.
And like for the stuff that we're seeing right now, it actually started a couple years ago. For it to actually, and if you listen to the plans that the cigarette smoking man's talking about, and these have been going on for years now.
Right.
So
True.
it's like. That's why I think let's detach it from any one person, and there's an organization. There's something else that is running. It can't be run out of the executive branch. That just, to me, that ruins it. And what happens if you get an election and then we're going to stop it? Oh wait, I don't know. That just kind of complicates it for me.
My hope is that's as far as they take it. If they
Yeah.
make a couple more references that are of that type without necessarily tipping who the president is, I will be able to accept like a handful of years from now that okay, well, whoever the president happens to be in X-Files land is mad at the FBI.
Did we
this
see a
week.
picture of the previous administration on the wall during the 2 years ago when X-Files was on?
I don't know.
But although in last week's episode we did see Trump from his election.
Yes, him and Putin immediately.
Like
After.
Yeah.
in the forward talk at the beginning when they were trying to explain everything, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like, oh, all right, then that kind of gives us, all right.
All right.
Yeah. So as we see here in the chat, Mulder has a photographic memory. I admit, has a detail that I had forgotten about, but it comes in quite handy.
And Scully has a Google memory.
Yes.
Who needs Google? That was awesome.
So of course they do make their way. Skinner, they get out of the woods. They get out of the house. They run through the woods. Skinner comes up to them, and I do like that there is some definite tension between them right now, given the ramifications of last week. And there was the talk that we had last week too about like, is there going to be some kind of thread running throughout the course of these episodes? And we're seeing little bits of it from this.
I love that after how many decades? What, like,
decades.
Almost 30? Really, like since the show originally premiered now, we're closing in on 3 decades. We're still figuring out ways for them to not trust Skinner.
I don't get this. They've been through so much together. Why are they so? He might piss him off every once in a while, but why are they against Skinner right now? Why are they distrustful? What happened last week that really threw them off?
Right. Well. Okay. So I do.
They weren't part of the discussion in the truck with
But there was that moment where it's like in the hospital when Mulder like attacks him and he's like, "You smell like smoke." So
okay.
I get it, and I also get like they got that, or they talked to Skinner on the phone, and Skinner was like, "You have to surrender." So maybe it made it seem like Skinner might be working with these people. Yeah. So I get it, and it's not even a complaint because I love the way those characters interact in those scenarios. So I'm not mad about it. It's just very funny to me that we're still finding new ways to do this, to reset the dynamic back to this place.
Have they ever trusted Skinner in 30 years?
And has he not proven himself at least twice?
At least
twice. Do you remember when Krychek gave him this remote-controlled disease, and he was in the bed, and he gave that monologue about like I made such a mistake. Like Mulder's crusade should have been my crusade too. Like he pours his heart out to them, and they're still like, "We don't trust you, bro."
Man, you've been working with people we don't like, man. What's going on with you?
Just the fact that he shot Krychek in the head, that's enough.
Right.
That's enough.
Not enough, though. So they do go off on a little chase. They go through Arlington Cemetery, locate the graves, leads them to the Deep Throat. But we also get a run-in with our assassin yet again. Nice little takedown for the two of them inside there as well. I was like, all right, I'm digging this episode at that point.
Yes. But again, a long-haired guy, very difficult to kill.
Yes.
Like, that should have killed him. That blow directly, like the head plant into the headstone.
Oh, yeah.
You'd think it would kill a regular person.
But we see he's not a regular person.
Super soldier.
Yeah.
But let's hope not.
Right,
No kidding.
No.
Like if he pulls out one of those like stiletto weapons.
Well, we do.
Roger Patrick's going to show up with a long.
Oh, dog it! I kept on scouring for any articles, and the last one I found was from mid last year, saying they would love to try to get him, as we talked about last week, but the Scorpion schedule was prohibiting it. Even though Chris Carter said, like, we're doing what we can to try to maybe get him in a later episode, but I saw no other mention of him after that. So
that would be amazing if, for whatever reason, they decide to continue X-Files beyond this year without Gillian Anderson. Just bring in Doggett, just to see how people react. Like, that would be amazing, wouldn't it? Not the show necessarily, but the conversation from the fan community online would be wonderful to sit back and watch unfold.
Well, we never really saw the Mulder Doggett years, so this could be our opportunity to see those two of them together.
Yeah, really. How many scenes did they have together at any point?
Very few.
They must have, especially like in the series finale, they definitely spent a couple minutes together. But like beginning of season 8, it was like a Mulder doppelganger.
Yep, that was running all around.
And that was like as close as the two of them came to interacting for a while.
Yeah, so it'd be cool to see what the two of them would be like. I'd just be curious to see what Doggett's up to these days.
Just a lot of It's a lot of that. An entire episode of that.
Did you guys think, though, because I was trying to follow along, the way they figured out the tombstone to go to, like, so-and-so is this many years, and that means this, and it might mean this, and then you go... Did that seem a little of a reach?
I would not have pieced that together.
It's like, so we're missing 33, so 33 and 3?
The thing is, once you got to that part, I could see them piecing that together. Yeah. It's the figuring out the way to there in the first place. I was like, wow, that's... But like Scully's got the
intuition
Google brain.
Or so, there was something.
Yeah, but also interesting too. Like, so who did they know to be able to put the wrong date on Langley's tombstone?
Right. That's one of those things that I don't necessarily know makes sense.
Wait. So who put the wrong date is on Langley's tombstone? I was under the assumption that they were thinking that Langley himself was somehow communicating with them from this Matrix-like world, right?
Not just like that, but I guess before he died, he set things in motion with Mundy, right? To say, like, hey, if something happens to me...
Oh, that's what it was, right?
Yeah, kind of... So she's the one that put the memory medallion there in the tombstone.
But from that many years ago?
You never know.
Did you see what they had? They had the little scanner, which is like a very, like, something that's come out in the past 10 years.
With the Q code looking thing on it.
That's not 17 years old.
Those were not, to my knowledge. No. And if you're in the chat and you know differently, to my knowledge, we weren't really using Q codes widely in 2002, was it?
Yeah, so...
I don't think so.
Again, there are certain elements that don't make a ton of sense.
It would, it would be interesting I wish we did get a chance to talk to Glenn Morgan last season. He came in and chatted with us. It would have been cool to be able, if we would have known, to reach out and see if he'd be interested in coming in and talk about this episode.
I don't know. Yeah. If a couple of y'all weren't super nice to his boss last week.
Oh, so sorry.
Hey, Frank, your face.
Yeah, I wasn't. I would have to be honest about that. If he were to come here, I would actually say...
I apologized and kissed butt profusely.
I can't.
And I'd be like, "Don't look at me, Glenn. I was the one.
I'm not the hater like everybody else was last week. I love the mythology episodes. I loved this episode, but I loved the 90s mythology episodes. I'm not.
Yes.
This one wasn't quite that, but I mean last week, but it's getting there. Today, this one we just saw yesterday, I consider almost it's a near mythology episode. It's kind of standalone, but it's kind of really attached to everything. And it was a better mythology episode, I thought.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, quick sidebar, talking about mythology and stuff. Of course, we've got Monster of the Week, mythology. What do you think? I mean, if X-Files, if Chris Carter were to say, like, all right, I'm just going to wrap up this mythology. For whatever, I'm going to write a definitive ending, and we can let the X-Files continue past that. Maybe some other new mythology we could start to develop, we could do that, or we just focus more on the Monster of the Week stuff. Would that satisfy you two?
I don't know.
Do you need a definitive ending for this mythology, or you're fine like this can just get as open-ended and as bizarre and as weird as you can
I
imagine?
think they do need to wrap up whatever the 30-year long weird tendrils mythology that needs to come to some kind of end. We need, like, has Scully still ever seen an alien in real life? Has she? I mean, when is the episode she saw it?
Well, when she saw that big saucer last season,
That was
the
a
finale,
dream.
but
That
it
was
was
a
probably
dream.
right. It was probably a fantasy, and I don't know.
Like, there's ways to wrap it up, and you'd think they would have done it with one of their films that they did because they didn't think they would ever do another one. But like the second film, which I kind of like, but the Monster of the Week episodes are what's carrying it right now. I wish they would kind of put some kind of end on the mythology, but there's got to be a way to extend a different kind of mythology, something different, something that doesn't have to be. They're not searching for alien, and not this. Well, and I still don't understand what the mythology is. We're gonna wipe out life. Cigarette Man wants to extinguish life,
And then I think these other guys want to colonize space, maybe.
But he wants to wipe out life, but still live here.
But also, so they want to colonize space. But Erica Price is also helping run this project to back up everybody's brain to a server, like a Second Life or a Matrix that you can live in.
But it's also being used to pursue space.
You keep all of the greatest, like Langley talks about, you keep all of the greatest thinkers' version of their consciousness in there. Then yeah, you could pull from. Oh, that's fun. It's
and
a
you
little
just
bit
make him
like
do your work for you. As you said, like there's no.
Steve Jobs is in there. Let's ask him about iPhone 10. That thing sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're just basically, we do find out like all these people that have kind of had their brains mapped are just basically at the disposal of this this government think tank, where they're just being used to create new ideas for space exploration or space colonization, but they don't get anything for themselves in this kind of second life.
It's kind of like almost like a purgatory, or almost like he described it as heaven for a while. There's no cancer man. There's no the Ramones play all day.
the New England Patriots are there, and they never ever win.
Yep. Which is a reference to, remember Cigarette Smoking Man in season way back. He gave the directive that they would never ever lose. Something like that. There was something that it was a reference to him directly. I love the way they're throwing back these references back.
Yeah.
Because they actually had an episode where people uploaded their. I don't.
There
remember.
was one
something.
where like it had a slightly happier ending. I remember from.
It was a much happier ending.
Yeah.
Not that we will live in perpetuity being tortured. Like the end of the episode, they didn't get rid of it. They didn't solve the problem and get rid of this electronic afterlife. They're still in there in perpetuity. Well, something's in there. I don't know if they're in there, or is it like all the attributes of them are in there? Is it actually the electronic impulses of their minds have been? What is inside this mainframe? What is it that we're watching?
Yeah, it's true, because when the process is described, it was like the salient points of their brain.
But it's not their consciousness.
Not necessarily, but I mean, I guess if you map enough of somebody's brain, you can develop at least algorithms that can kind of simulate how that person would think.
This is essentially science that I don't know that we're supposed to think too much about, because this is magic science.
True.
Yeah.
But the idea is that these people don't realize they're within a simulation.
Right.
So they can live this kind of best life and never realize that it is just fake, unless you're like rare individual like Langley, who can realize like, oh, wait a minute, I don't trust these guys. I'm already a conspiracy theorist at heart anyway. So
Well, it's like he's
It
the
served
guy
him
who,
well.
yeah.
Yeah, and he's the guy who you guys are familiar with simulation theory, right?
I don't know.
Well, it's the idea, like simulation theory is essentially the idea that if there is a possibility, which it's argued that there is, that we could one day create a version, like a computer simulation that we could put ourselves into that would be so detailed and so so profoundly, like so deep and rich that it would be indistinguishable from our reality. And this theory posits that if there's a chance we can do that, then not that it's already happened, that it absolutely must have already happened, and we are currently living in a simulation.
Oof.
Everything's real.
However, that would be super disappointing because this simulation is garbage.
That's true. That's
This doesn't sound anywhere near as nice as the simulation Langley is in.
but this
It sounds terrible.
It sounds at least he gets to go to a Ramones show every single day. He gets
I don't know what you live in. I like my simulation. I'm just telling you.
This simulation is terrifying.
I'm sorry, Jim. I got to side with Lex on this. I'm very disappointed in this simulation run. I'm looking for a restart on this.
I think
Reboot,
it's got a glitch in it. I think for sure, like the profound system error, like fatal. Like we're blue screening right now.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for them. It's like, hey, I played this version of the game as far as I can. It gets really depressing. I'm gonna just stop.
Wait, are you
start
talking
over.
about the X-Files simulation or us?
Us?
Oh,
This simulation, yeah.
okay. Let's
Jim's in a good version. This simulation's running sweet.
You guys must have had a bad week. I had a bad week, but anyways, no. The thing was, but he described a simulation towards the end as we can have dreams, but we're not allowed to dream them. Like, it's a hell. It's like they are just completely. They're slaves to. They're just basically they're mining their intelligence to try to colonize space is what it is, right? Is that what it is?
It is space colonization because we do play into that fact because we see Erica Price, Barbara Hershey's back, and another nod to kind of continuing some of the threads of mythology.
And we reference Mr. Y by name.
Great Jowly, yeah, fantastic.
Great Jowly, or like Tan Bannon.
Yes, that's right.
I think was the comparison Lucretia drew last week.
He was also in Molly's game, and I
Was he?
I playing a big thug, and all I could imagine was just like, oh, that guy's
How was Molly's game?
Yeah. Side.
a little sidebar.
I want to
Yeah.
see it.
Wasn't bad. I had heard some people that
I
was
must see it this
loving
weekend.
I enjoyed it. I'm a sucker for Aaron Sorkin.
I'm in the bag for whatever. I'm like slowly working my way through the West Wing again.
Oh
Such a great
man,
series.
oh man.
I'm like in season 4.
I still
like
think
it's-
Sports Night is a better series. Did you guys?
I have actually not seen Sports Night. I got to get on that.
Aaron Sorkin does his. He had to compress everything down into a 20-minute episode, but he still told a great story every episode.
I need
I
to
really
get
enjoyed
on.
it, but I got frustrated by the Peter Carrazza, Felicity Huffman kind of starts and stop romance in the second season. It got frustrating to me. I'm just
Yeah.
like, oh, why are we putting so many unnecessary obstacles in that relationship when all the other stuff was really compelling?
It ended well though. It
I'll
ended so
look
great.
for that when I get to it in like 7 years. My list of stuff, man, is so long. Is so distressingly long. You have to essentially you have to be like an X-Files right now to jump up to the top of my queue.
Do you
'cause
think somebody could, if someone had never seen the original series, could they be watching this series and enjoying it?
Possibly. I think they would probably get a good deal less out of it.
I don't think they could.
I think the mythology stuff would be completely impenetrable.
I would have to mention but I also think if you watch Mythology episode, I don't know if that would suck me in enough to want to go back and rewatch or watch those earlier seasons to find out what I'm missing. But if I was to watch a standalone episode,
For sure.
Yeah.
I would be intrigued enough to want to go back and revisit.
I think
stuff.
like in the coming weeks we're going to see something, those funny Monster of the Week episodes that I'm still looking forward to. I think one
right.
of those
Darren
would be-
Morgan's got
Yep.
one like coming
Yep.
up. I think before the halfway point of the season. Maybe it's number 4. It's called The Lost Art of Forehead Sweat.
Yeah,
I can't wait. I
It is.
can't
I'm
wait for that episode.
eagerly anticipating this.
Oh, that's gonna be a good one. We could get Darren Morgan in here. That would be fantastic.
I would just ask him questions about wearing the fluke suit. I would just monopolize the hour being like, what was it like? And he'd be like, well, he'd tell me, and I'd be like, all right, cool. But
really?
but what was it really like? and then he would be like, well, blah blah blah. He'd give me an answer, and I'd be like, okay, cool, thank you. But seriously, what was it like in there?
Don't give me the canned answer you've given so many times as other people ask you. Let's dial.
Was it all
let's pour down
prosthetics, or
there.
did they really do that to your mouth?
No, they really did that to his mouth.
Like it took you a full second to process what I just said. That was great. Thanks for that, Frank.
That's right. What I liked in this episode too is that usually, more often than not, it seems to be in the X-Files. Like when somebody's going to get in trouble or kind of held captive, at least for whatever period of time, it more often than not ends up being Scully.
Yep.
So I really like that it was Mulder this time, and Scully was out there, the one that was kind of making things happen towards the tail end of this episode.
Yes.
It's very nice to see that, and I just like Siri kicking some butt as the door closes. That nameless thug.
Just like from right on the other side of the door frame, just taking him out.
Yep. I was like, all right, way to go, Scully. I really enjoyed this.
And she took out the simulation.
Yes.
It was, but it was interesting because so we see Mulder gets held captive. They make their way in through like a really lame kind of cover story, like, oh yeah, hey, I can't. This is a dangerous Hannibal Lecter type prisoner.
I really liked the Hannibal Lecter reference. I don't know if you guys
That
have
was
watched
great!
it. Yeah,
That
so
was
you've
good.
watched Hannibal.
Yeah, explain it for people who may not know.
So
yeah.
Hannibal is one of my favorite shows that there's ever been. Ran on NBC for 3 years. Brian Fuller, and they allowed them to get away with a staggering amount as far as gore for a major network. Incredible series, stars Mads Mikkelsen as Hannibal Lecter. It's mostly prequel to Red Dragon, and then the last half of the final third season is essentially a retelling of Red Dragon. Gillian Anderson is on Hannibal as a character they created specifically for the series called Bedelia du Maurier, who is, at the beginning of the show, she is Hannibal's psychiatrist, and then later on becomes more fully involved in his misadventures than maybe she anticipated. Phenomenal show, and she's phenomenal on it, but that was a very fun reference for that reason.
The reference of her dragging him in and calling him Hannibal Lecter was great.
And I love Mulder doing the...
and she's married to the job.
And that super creepy dude who lets them in who tries to hit on her.
Oh, yeah.
Yikes. But I love that moment, that aside when he turns his back and they both do the vomit face.
I know.
It was really great.
If nothing else, they're having a lot of fun. They are definitely having a lot of fun with this.
Like it's me, like jumping back when they're doing their research on the building and the project. I loved with the muffins. I loved the moment where Mulder is like, I want to open an X file on this muffin and figure out why it's so good.
Yes.
And Scully's like, it's so good. I don't care if it came out of an alien's butt. Oh, also speaking of that scene, I really like that the X-Files are now accessible online.
Digital.
Yes.
And I like that somebody at the FBI had the wherewithal to have all of the X-Files uploaded.
Oh, wait. Wasn't it Mueller?
They
Yeah,
reference
they-
Mueller specifically. Like it was, I guess, his order at the time. And I love that. And it's so odd to me that this didn't happen sooner.
Well, given like when you hear about some of the stuff that they'd been up to, like in the 50s and 60s, with that, it kind of makes sense that if getting here in the late 90s, early 2000s, like, all right, why don't we see where some of these things kind of like connect and have similar touchstones? If we're going to open up some X-File cases, why don't we look to our past as well? So it makes sense why they would want to do something.
But
like that.
in apparently now the X-Files, they belong to everybody. They don't belong to Fox Mulder anymore. They're not just his. They are for everybody.
And I wonder if maybe that's exactly why this hasn't happened before, because when he and Scully were essentially the entirety of the X-Files unit, I don't think he would have allowed that to happen.
Yes.
But what does that exactly mean is for everybody? I'm not. Is it out on the World Wide Web? But has Snowden hacked it yet?
Well, no,
Right.
I feel like it's for everybody if you have
It's in
clearance, yeah.
Yes.
It's in the Trump dossier. Is that where it's at? Oh no! Oh my gosh, we're going to tie it into that then.
Yeah, if you don't have the clearance, then it's not necessarily for you, which
Yeah.
is a shame. But I think like I can understand like Skinner saying that it is supposed to be for everyone. Although I don't feel like the government sees it that way quite yet.
There was that moment where I wonder if you're Mulder, are you going, oh, you're telling me what the X-Files are for?
Yeah.
You're telling me, Walter, what the point of the X-Files is?
And I even liked at the end of the episode when they get back to the house, they pick up some of the old X-File folders and then just like, what do we?
Yeah.
Who cares?
They just toss them. They go back to the couch.
What's the point of cleaning
And
this stuff
whose
up?
house
Fox's.
is it? She said our house.
Well, that's true.
She said it once. She's called it Fox's house at the beginning.
But when she calls it in,
'Cause she had to
says,
call it in, yeah.
I'm at Fox Mulder's residence. But they behave very much like two people who cohabitate.
Are they in love? Are they back together? They never really.
Whether that is the intent or not of Chris Carter, I feel like certainly the two of them are portraying that.
Yeah.
I don't know that.
It feels like they're hewing back to the 90s again when people. I remember TV Guide called them before they ever got together the most romantic couple on TV, and it was before they ever made any romantic overtures to each other. They were called the most romantic couple on TV, and it's maybe there's something about that. We don't need to show this, but everybody still loves the fact that they are still the most romantic couple on TV.
Well, isn't the X-Files the show that essentially created shippers?
Probably.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah.
As a concept within fandoms, especially within like nerdy fandoms, if I'm mistaken about this, if there was one sooner than that really where shipping was a concept, was a big element
Yeah, that's true.
within a genre piece, because obviously you've had comedies based on romances
Moonlighting.
before. Exactly.
Yes.
Remember?
Exactly. But I mean, within a genre piece that has a built-in nerdy fandom.
You say there was something before that?
Well, there might have been, but I feel like X-Files might have been the first where it was so pronounced. And it might be. I want to now specifically lock down where the term shipping originated.
I think I'd never heard of it until like what, the past couple of years though.
Really? Oh man, I've been hearing about that for a long, because everybody wants to ship somebody.
Oh yeah.
Let's
So real quick, all right, we got to vamp because Frank is
There we
Googling
go.
because he does not have Scully's brain.
That's right.
All right, vamp. Oh man, that I like that Mulder gets his phone back. I like how he doesn't want to give his phone over as evidence because it will sit in a locker for months, and he wants his phone. I also like that he throws it in the oven for a minute.
That was bizarre. But you know what's cool about this? Back in the day, X-Files were known for, it was one of the series that first used cell phones.
Yes.
As central part of the series. And their phones started off big at the beginning of the X-Files.
Yes.
They had the larger phones. They gradually got smaller, and they moved on to the flip phones. And now his phone this week was the central part of the episode. Langley contacting him, Facebook timing him on his phone, which is kind of cool. They use the central piece of technology to kind of tell the episode. It was kind of interesting. They thought they destroyed the Matrix, but they did not.
They didn't. And like, do we think this is something that they're ever going to touch on again? Because this is
There you go.
supposed to be a
You are correct,
case of
Lex
the week.
Michael. Yes,
It was.
It was
the
what?
actual term shipping was originated in the mid '90s by internet fans of the TV show The X-Files.
Boom.
Are
you
you
go.
serious?
Yes,
That's fantastic. That's awesome.
Who
else did they ship?
They called themselves relationshippers at first. That's a terrible. Then our shipper, and finally just shipper.
Our shipper.
But I feel like shipper had the comma right there at the top of shipper, and they finally just dropped that and just said like,
There
no,
we
we're
go.
just shipper.
Where did I hear
The
that?
X-Files was at the forefront of everything. I love it.
Look at that. Yes. But I feel like at this point they're like, whether it's like the will they or won't they, I don't need to focus on their romantic status, just them together.
Yep,
Just
I agree.
you know, I'm that is fine. That
We've
is
only
good
got 8
enough
more
for me.
episodes. You know, we got a lot of stuff to get to.
And what will most likely be the last iteration of X-Files, especially if Gillian Anderson holds to not coming back. I think Chris Carter has pretty recently made comments in the direction of, well, I wouldn't want to do it. Right. Which I do think is for the best. I joke about replacing her with Doggett, but honestly, yes, I think it is probably for the best that maybe this is the end if we're not going to get the two of them back together.
Who owns the franchise of the X-Files? Is it Chris Carter or is it Fox?
It was Fox. Now, because it's Fox, technically the Walt Disney Corporation is
Not
about
yet.
to take
Yeah.
full
We have-
about to take full ownership.
That's makes me so sad. There's 18 months of that. But no, here's the thing. They could reboot as something else. I mean, like you talked about, would you watch it if it were not like this deep mythology? Maybe this is the end of this run of the X-Files.
Well, wasn't that, or there was certainly a lot of speculation, but wasn't that the purpose behind introducing Miller and Einstein?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they'd essentially be like the next generation
But
of
then-
X-Filesers.
Yeah, but they never really kind of went their own direction. It was the exact same story.
Right, and like they're still so broadly defined, and I feel like I don't really know either one of
We
them.
didn't see him this episode at all.
No, Chris Carter is writing one of the, or did write. He's not writing it now. They're probably done. But one of the episodes that's airing within the next couple of weeks, I believe he wrote, but it's ostensibly a standalone. I would not be surprised if we see the two of them pop up again in that,
Good.
because it's one of his.
I mean, it's fine, but I guess if we were only getting a limited amount of X-Files, like, I want yes, Fox and Scully, or Mulder and Scully. You know,
yeah.
Einstein and Miller.
Look what you've done to me.
Really
Fox and
quickly,
Scully.
J_473 in the chat. Yes, Scully saw a shapeshifter.
Where was this?
I think there's a point like maybe the alien bounty hunter at a certain
Oh,
point
in the previous.
in the previous iteration of the show.
Yeah.
I think one or more of the alien bounty hunters. I think at some point she came into
because my
contact
question, like what I was thinking on the way over here today, is she a believer? I mean, how much she had this whole long transformation of how she believed, and then towards the end when Doggett and Reyes came up, she was the one kind of helping to drive it.
Yeah.
But like, where is she right now? Because is she still the skeptic? I just don't know where she's at.
I feel like she can be skeptical in the sense. I don't think she's not as hardcore as she
Right.
was before. I mean, certainly, even though she may not have, visually seen things, she's certainly, given this body of evidence or experiences that she's had, she's certainly shifted more over towards Mulder's worldview, but not so much that she can't say, hold on, before we go fully down the rabbit hole.
Right,
Let's
but she's
just-
also demonstrated an openness. If an absence of scientific explanations are present, that doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? If there's an absence of scientific evidence to explain a phenomenon, she has demonstrated openness, even going all the way back to season 1. So I watched for the first time in a while. I threw on Beyond the Sea from season 1 pretty
Love it.
recently.
Love it.
It's an all-timer for X-Files, which for my money places it high in the running for all-time TV episodes.
Yep.
That there are, but we even saw. Now, granted, she was in a highly emotional state following the death of her father, but we even saw Scully as early as that being potentially open to the idea of psychic phenomena.
Well, but remember, she's a very committed woman of faith, her Catholic faith, and so she is open to a little bit of mysticism in her life.
Very true.
In a different direction, and probably not so much alien life, but things that. Religion is a way to explain things that we don't understand.
Right.
And so that's something very close to her.
True.
One last thing as we wrap up, and one thing before you got on our shipping thing that I want to mention. The only thing that was kind of a little hinky with me is that we see Mulder with Erica Price, and the way that it seems so easy. Like, why do you want to go see this computer data core that we have here? Oh, I just want to see, it's my chance to get as close to God as I could, maybe in this life or the next. I felt it was like a really lame reason that she would let Mulder be led right down to that computer and data core.
It also seemed a little bit difficult to track what her intention was in that scene, because immediately after she says that, then she's got that line about how, every time you use your phone, we can take a little bit of view that way, and we don't even need to tell you that it's happening. It's totally painless.
Well, I didn't, and plus her line about and I was trying to kill you, but since Langley likes you, I'm not going to kill you now.
What?
Remember that?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
It's like, why? Why not?
That's that convoluted mythology they're trying to work out, and it's not working so well.
She references at the beginning of their conversation, whoever this Mr. Y is, he has explained to her that Fox Mulder is somehow significant, like we know he always is,
yes,
and that the two of them were going to keep interacting at various points. And so she has that line about alluding to, well, I didn't know what he was talking about, but now I'm starting to see.
Yeah, it's and it's going to take a few of those runnings before she fully gets on board. Yeah, man, Mulder's where it's at.
And I like to think, presumably Mr. Y is not psychic. I feel like most of these syndicate members are tending to chase the supernatural instead of being the supernatural. I also like the idea that perhaps he watched the X-Files in its entirety, and he knows that Fox Mulder is important because David Duchovny is #1 on the call sheet.
Yeah, I just, as much as I don't want the mythology to kind of infiltrate the monster of the week too, I feel like this one kind of made sense in terms of using this brain think tank for theorizing space colonization. Kind of made sense to tie it into that kind of conspiracy. But I don't know if I want every single episode being they're somehow behind, or at least have some kind of interest in that particular phenomenon they're investigating every single week.
I would love to see maybe a more satisfying resolution to the Syndicate storyline, but we do only have 8 episodes left, and the mythology that we've built for this run is so convoluted already that I have no clue how we could possibly resolve all of it.
I wish they would have just had one goal that the Syndicate, aka Cigarette Smoking Man, aka what's her name,
Erica Price, and
they
Mr.
were all
Y.
pursuing, instead of we have these 2 things that we're pursuing. But let's do a Monster of the Week episode and just ignore both of those. The world's about to end, but let's go chase our next whatever.
It would have definitely simplified it if
because that's where we'll find William. Oh, and then William.
Right, and then William,
gosh.
right. And maybe it would have been it would have been easier if Smoking Man, Erica Price, and Mr. Y were all on the same team. After laying low for decades, Smoking Man is not only somehow not dead, but the Syndicate is now ascended once again under his control, perhaps. Because before, we got the sense that he was just one of many people on a board of directors for the Syndicate. He maybe didn't even have that much specific authority. But now he's he's like the Kylo Ren of this business.
Oh,
he laid waste to the entire thing, and now he's like, it's mine, I'm in charge. But he smokes more.
All I know is that, and we talked about this last week too, is that,
was awesome.
Of course, Gillian Anderson not coming back. This is her last run, and Chris Carter said that he did not write a definitive ending for all the mythology stuff. So
I wonder though, as he gets the reaction to I wonder if he'll change his ending. I wonder.
I would love for him just to give a definitive ending. I mean, unless he's thinking like, well, maybe we'll get another movie someday. So
Well,
I
you
don't
know-
want to end it.
Just don't end it on a cliffhanger.
Right.
I mean, you can have it open, but finish a story.
Yeah.
Finish the story. Last season, don't have another dream, for crying out loud.
And like I don't feel like I need plot closure. It would be nice if we're not gonna get any more, if we're even just unlikely to get any more. I'd like to see some semblance of character closure for the two of them.
Yeah, I agree.
Because we keep quote unquote ending the X-Files without really doing that. We actually, although I guess there were very, very mixed feelings about the original series finale, I feel like to an extent we actually get that, or at least we get as close as we've come with this show so far to providing character closure for the two of them. I hope that we're able to get something resembling
I thought
that.
the best character closure for them was the second movie when you see him rowing in the boats out to the island. That was fantastic. They're taking off. X-Files was behind them. We're gonna go live our happy life now. I thought that was great.
That actually I think would have been, but then they kept going.
Yeah, well, who knows? Maybe they'll go back to those boats at the end of this season.
That'd be great.
That'd be great. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for hopping in the chat. Here we go. We got
I would
Jay
like
for
oh,
to
some
see. Oh yeah, so J473 pointing out she also saw the UFO that took Mulder, and then that he would like to see Marita Covarrubias again. Who wouldn't? One of the greatest names in the history of fiction, Marita Covarrubias.
Oh,
Wait, who
man.
is that?
That's
That
the
was
blonde?
from the
who's,
UN. The one who was Andrea on Walking Dead.
Yes,
hanging out with
that's
Krychek.
That was Andrea. I
Yeah,
knew
yeah.
I knew her from somewhere.
And she's the one who,
Always
for
knew
a
it.
second, was Mulder's pseudo informant after the death of Mr. X.
Yep. But didn't she get the black stuff in her eyes? And
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right. Yes, I mostly, but I know she's in the series finale. I was like, I mostly
She
forget
was.
what happened to her,
they
but
drug her in as a witness.
yeah.
Oh, look at that.
Who
Good to
wouldn't
see.
like to see more Marita Covarrubias?
Bring her back. She's not. What's she doing? Nothing.
No,
I mean
she's not on The Walking Dead anymore.
No,
so-
not for a while.
Yeah. All right, so-
5-year-old spoilers, guys. And Andrea's not on that show anymore.
Boy, let's just confuse this completely right now.
Ladies and gentlemen, we could talk X-Files all night. Sadly,
Yeah.
we can't. We've run out of time. The simulation is reaching its endpoint, so we need to be rebooted.
It will live
Start this all
forever.
over again next week.
Although once the feed ends, that long-haired assassin is going to pop up and glare at you.
Oh, great. And do the little, like... Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us for the X-Files After Show. Of course, you can always like us on Facebook, give us those 5 stars on iTunes, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and of course, everybody, thanks for hopping in the chat. And if you're watching the show after we've streamed live, feel free to comment down below. Lex, do you have a question you'd love for them to answer down in the comments if they're watching this after the fact?
Yes. What do you think of Frank's T-shirt?
Oh my gosh, what a great... wow.
Let's see it. Let's see it.
Oh, here we go. A little Funko Pop Batman and Robin, everybody. All right.
His T-shirt game is always on point.
Oh, that's so kind of you, Lex. But if you want to continue the conversation with us even after the show's over, Jim, where can they find you, sir?
You can find me at Con Guy Jim, and also this coming Monday night, if you guys want to check us out, we have the Con Guy Comic-Con Prep Show. We will be talking about this year's Comic-Cons coming up, plus all the fandoms you need to be jumping into this year, including X-Files.
I am Lex Michael. I am all over social media at the Lex Michael. I also do a podcast with Tari J. Miller called Missing Out. He and I have different cultural backgrounds. We grew up differently. We found different pieces of media at different times. It's a show where we share those pieces of media with each other, what they mean to us, how they've helped inform our experience, etc., etc., etc. We're very proud of it. The episode we dropped this week, we're talking about the 1995 magnum opus Virtuosity, starring Denzel Washington and Russell Crowe. The episode we're recording this weekend to drop next Tuesday is going to be a 2017 retrospective where we each talk about a few of our favorite things from this past year. It's at Missing Outcast on Twitter. You can find us on iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, Google Play, anywhere. Please come check it out. We love it. We hope you love it too. We have a lot of fun with it. Yeah, check us out.
I have nearly nothing as much as fun happening as Jim or Lex do. It's just me, guys.
But you got the best shirts.
Oh, thank you, Jim, so much.
By a
you can
mile.
follow me on Twitter and Instagram. To see all my, the ridiculous exploits I get up to that are nowhere near as cool as these two gentlemen at Happy Go Jackie. Folks, that's gonna do it for this episode of the X-Files After Show. We'll be back here next Thursday night to break down another exciting episode of the X-Files. Hope to see you there.
Lucretia, we missed you.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
You said taint.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.